We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. It's your round one recap. We're just starting. We're live just after midnight here on Friday morning. Sam, you ready to go?
Long day.
It's been a long day.
You're still not anywhere near finished.
No, it's been a 6-minute day. 7 minutes even.
That's true.
It's Friday. It's a whole new day, and I just finished my coffee. I'm ready to go with your round one recap, Sam.
Madness.
It was another crazy draft. This was awesome.
Starting with number one overall.
Started with Trayvon Walker.
It happened.
It did. So we'll recap as much as the big storylines as possible. Probably won't get into the guard picks right now, but we just want to recap all of round one. Of course, thanks to everybody that joined the PFF live show, and hope you'll just stick with us into the wee hours of the morning here as we recap round one. But it started with Trayvon Walker.
Yep.
Going number one overall to the Jaguars. They did it. They went with the athletic projection over Aidan Hutchinson.
Yeah, and look, we talked about that pick to death on the lead up to the podcast, and it's been done now, and it's easy to crap all over it and say, look, this isn't the pick we would make. The guy's got no production. It's a complete project, et cetera, et cetera. But we genuinely haven't seen an athletic profile like Trayvon Walker, and I think the story coming out of this draft is so much about what this draft didn't contain, right? In terms of elite talents at the top, in terms of quarterbacks that people want to invest in, all these things. And if you're Jacksonville sitting there with number one overall, what are you supposed to do in terms of, like, do you just take the single? Do you just take the easy, the guaranteed decent player? Or do you go, no, let's try and go for something special? Now, if that was your attitude, I think there should have been more of a discussion about, was Derek Stingley in play, or was a wide receiver in play? Those positions that are really going to move the needle in terms of wins and losses, PFF WAR, the most important positions. But if we're sticking at edge rusher, there's a case to be made, right, that Trayvon Walker has the highest upside of anybody that they could draft. And for Balky to go out there and go, look, this is what we're doing. This is the pick we're making. I respect the guts it takes to do that.
I want to ask about the receiver component here, because A.J. Brown has been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Marquise Brown was traded from the Ravens to the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to break that trade down on the PFF NFL Daily. How many teams in the first round ahead of the Eagles would rather have A.J. Brown plus his contract? How far up do you have to go? Like, when you look at what the Jets came away with, that's great. I mean, Sauce Gardner at 4, Garrett Wilson at 10. Mm-hmm. But if you said before the draft, like, instead of picking at 10, you're going to get A.J. Brown and his contract, knowing that the Jets, hey, they were in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes. They wanted that move. If you're the Jaguars at 1, if you had the choice between A.J. Brown and $25 million a year or Trayvon Walker, as far as what is going to win football games for you and move the needle for your franchise.
Yeah, but I think for the Jags in particular, like, you don't just need to move the needle and get better and which gives you a bigger jump? Absolutely, A.J. Brown is contract. But you don't just need to make one jump. You need to make like 7. And it's about what is a piece that enables us to make jumps 2 through 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And if you have A.J. Brown's contract, you might not be able to get all the way through 7. You might stall out at 4 or 5 because you run out of money because you're paying A.J. Brown $25 million a year. So the contract is so important. That's why Tennessee traded him away in the first place, right? It's why San Francisco are potentially looking at, Debo might not be there because all of a sudden you got to pay Debo that kind of money as well. NFL teams just get so freaked at the prospect of having to pay a good player good money because you only have so much money to divvy up that it torpedoes draft value. So I don't think for the Jags it actually makes that much sense. I think there's a lot of other teams that could potentially have been in that market or should have been in that market. But Jacksonville, they need the rookie contract as well as everything else.
I just love so much of what the Eagles did overall. I'm excited, and a lot of stuff happened. I don't want to jump around too much. Let's go through the top of the draft a little bit more. But Trayvon Walker goes 1.
Yep.
And so you've got that projection. Jags end up trading back into the first round. They get Devin Lloyd, the guy that we had as the highest-ranked linebacker for most of the draft process. A lot of people, we expected him to go top 15. He ends up going to 27. Jags traded up with the Bucs to get him, and they're coming away with 2 pretty good defensive players there. Lloyd is just a good all-around linebacker. Good coverage skills, excellent run defender. So overall, the Jags, we'll see with the Trayvon Walker thing. But the Lions at 2, they get Aidan Hutchinson, the guy that was number 1 on the PFF draft board, the one we expected to go number 1. And then they make an aggressive move, man. They come up from 32 all the way to 12 to get Jamison Williams, the speedster out of Alabama.
And, we've got some cool new features on PFF's Draft Tracker this year. So if you go to PFF.com, find the Draft Tracker, PFF.com/draft/tracker, you'll see all these picks input as well. But what we have now is the ability to vote kind of live, right? PFF users tell you who you would pick, like who's the pick you would make at this spot, and also whether you like the pick that actually got made. And just contrasting picks number 1 and 2, with Trayvon Walker going to Jacksonville and then Aidan Hutchinson going to Detroit. Obviously, if you've listened to this podcast, we'll like one more than the other, right? Aidan Hutchinson over the Trayvon Walker. And the listeners, so both picks, the users would have picked Aidan Hutchinson, right? Jacksonville fans, Detroit fans, either way, the PFF user pick would have been Aidan Hutchinson. 95% of the Lions picks, or the Lions fans, liked the Aidan Hutchinson pick at number 2 overall. That number is 21% for Jacksonville at number 1 overall, selecting Trayvon Walker. So there's a big disparity. Now, I'm sure that
we've influenced that a little
exactly,
bit. Yeah.
Right? But it would be interesting to know what the honest Jacksonville fan opinion of this is versus this is our guy now. Let's immediately start pivoting towards the upside and the athletic potential and blah, blah, blah. Like if you've got, in a vacuum, honest Jacksonville fan, like you are now speaking for the fan base, would you really have rather Aidan Hutchinson?
Yeah, I think so. I think you'd rather Aidan Hutchinson. We'll see, though. The upside play with Trayvon Walker, I think the Lions win out on the Aidan Hutchinson, dropping to 2. And it's an aggressive move, man, to go get Jamison Williams, right? So we're not going to go pick by pick because we'll have division recaps all throughout next week. Who do you think wins?
The Jets.
In round 1 here. Who are the best teams? I agree with the Jets because here's the deal, man. Let's take the pulse of the NFL this offseason. It's not like run defenders that are getting traded. It's not. Pass rushers are making some moves and stuff like that. But it is receivers and QBs, man. They are making moves across the NFL, and that is the league. And to combat that, you need good corners and you need good receivers of your own. And there were mocks where the Jets came away with Ike Ekwonu and Jermaine Johnson at 10, right? And it's like, man, if that's what they come away with, that'd be a disappointment. But I love what the Jets came away with. Sauce Gardner, cornerback 1 for many at 4, and Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 1 for many.
Yeah.
So at high value positions, the Jets killed it, and then they trade back in to get Jermaine Johnson at 26. Much more palatable at that point there. 3 first-rounders for the Jets.
And I think trades were one of the stories of this first round, right? This is something that came up before the draft that, hey, half the first round is looking to move down, And the question was, well, okay, that's great, but how many teams are looking to move up? All of a sudden, once you got past, it was quiet in the first 10 picks. Then all the trades started. All of a sudden, the trade partners materialized, and it was teams jumping back into the first round more than it was teams looking to jump up to those top 10 picks, which is it's kind of exactly what we said about this draft, right? It's not, the strength of it isn't 1 to 10. The strength of it is 10 to 50. And maybe the strength actually is 10 to 30, right? And all of a sudden you've got these teams that are sitting there at 40 and 50 trying to jump up into that spot and get those guys at the kind of top end of that second tier. That's where all these trades started to materialize, and guys are getting traded left, right, and center.
Felt good about the Giants as well. We were in the back room, Sam. We were recording some
Studio B,
yeah. Not the back room.
Yeah.
We had a background and everything, but you can see all of our videos all over the YouTube channel. They'll be coming out if they're not out there already. But we were talking about both New York teams, man. The Giants, if you had painted the picture that you're going to get Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, I think you made the very keen points. There were points in the process. Both guys were expected to go number 1 overall, and the Giants got them at 5 and 7. So Thibodeau rushing off the edge, Evan Neal to step in, likely play right tackle opposite Andrew Thomas. The Giants should be pretty excited about those 2 picks as well.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, for me, I liked Neal the best among the tackles. I think they even admitted all the grades on the tackles were close. But I'd be excited if I was a Giants fan with those 2 picks.
Yeah, there's an argument as to how much of the Kayvon Thibodeau hype to begin with, right? Remember, we're not that far removed from him being the presumptive number 1 overall pick. Kayvon Thibodeau was the guy that was supposed to go number 1 overall, and then it became Aidan Hutchinson. It was Evan Neal. It became Aidan Hutchinson again. Then all of a sudden, the Trayvon Walker thing came kind of out of left field, and that's where the pick ended up. So there's a debate as to how much of that was just the draft community, people watching tape, college football fans, whatever it is. Those were the guys that liked Kayvon Thibodeau. And the NFL was never really quite as high on him. And actually, he was more like a top 5 player that the people, public, the lay fan, whatever, those people thought was a number 1 overall candidate, and then that changed. And really what happened is that just people started to catch up to where the NFL was and this guy all along. But it's good. It's worth making that, at least a good portion of people, even if they're not NFL front office people, thought that both the players that the Giants snagged with their two first rounders, 2 top 10 picks, were arguable top 1 overall caliber players. And that has to be good for them. And they're 2 positions of need. Whether or not you agree that Thibodeau is a number 1 overall type of talent, the dude is obviously talented as a pass rusher. You can just see the burst off the line. You can see how twitchy he is and immediate. And then Evan Neal is a freak. The dude is huge.
He is. Moves well. Best combination of run blocking and pass blocking, I think, in this draft. So that's why I love what the Giants did. I like the Jets a little bit more. I think they win the New York battle, but ever so slightly. I thought both New York teams came out looking good. Even at midnight, the PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. What do you think about the Ravens in this first round?
I really like what the Ravens did. The Ravens are a team that might be as sort of shrewd and sharp and developed and progressive in terms of understanding data and the nuances of how to build rosters and where to exploit edges in every facet of the game, whether it's in-game with 4th down decision-making, whether it's roster construction, whether it's playing the draft, whether it's the compensatory pick system, every aspect of it, Baltimore is at the cutting edge. So for the Ravens to come away with 2 players that are generally not seen as high-value picks, they're not. I mean, they're positions that would be at the low end of the scale in terms of moving the needle for wins and losses. That doesn't make sense on the face of it. But when you start factoring in, okay, what Baltimore knows this kind of thing, right? They're not looking at this and going, let's just take this guy because safeties move the needle. They know. So if they're taking them, what's the extra layer that you're not considering on its face? And I think what it is that if you disregard positional value, you could easily make a case that Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame and Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, the center, are 2 of the 5 best players in this draft, right? If you completely ignored position value and just said, who are the best football players? Those are 2 of the 5 guys. And Benjamin Solak, I think, went on a big rant on radio somewhere that was posted on Twitter where he was like, the nerds are ruining football and positional value. It sucks. Like, just draft good players. It's fun. I don't care. Like, forget the fact that quarterbacks are valuable, so you have to take them in the first round. Because if they suck, it doesn't do you any good, right? He's bad. So just draft the good players. And I think Baltimore have drafted 2 of the best players in this draft, and they haven't had to do it in the top 5. They haven't had to do it in the top 10. They've been able to trade down and snag 2 of the best players in the draft at positions where, even if it's not the most valuable position in the league, if you're elite at it, you're going to provide more than what that position typically gives you in terms of winning.
So a couple things here, and I'm kind of with Ben, friend of the show, Ben Solak, on that. Because when I'm rewatching the 2001 NFL draft, and it's like, running back could be in play. Any position's in play at 6, at 8. I get it, but man, the nerds are making some decisions here, because this whole offseason, the receivers are on the move. I mean, the NFL is realizing, but here's the thing: half the NFL is realizing the need for these high-value receivers. The other half is trading them away, or trading down and not taking them, or whatever.
The other half's just deciding they don't want to pay them.
Well, but we're going to learn a lot. I am fascinated by this offseason, right? Tyreek Hill on the move, Devontae Adams on the move. We talk about the force multiplier that wide receiver 1 is, the biggest force multiplier besides quarterback, right? We're going to learn a lot about Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and now A.J. Brown on the move. Allen Robinson's moving. Amari Cooper's moving. But here's the thing. Amongst all that, the Ravens traded Marquise Brown for a first-rounder. Mm-hmm. And that's where I thought they did the best business. And I tweeted this out, and I think this is just, if you can maintain the patience to just run the business this way, right? Just like I said with the Ravens last year, they drafted Orlando Brown in the 3rd round. They got a few years out of him. They flipped him from a 3rd rounder to a 1st rounder. Great business. Well, they did it again. They drafted Marquise Brown in the 1st round. You get 3 years out of him. He's not A.J. Brown, so you're not going to re-sign him for that crazy money. And they flipped him for a 1st-round pick to the Cardinals. An equivalent pick. And they end up trading down and eventually get Tyler Linderbaum. And yeah, they go from receiver to center. And we got to figure out what they're going to do at receiver. And Lamar's tweeting, and Lamar's not happy. Supposedly, I think it was before the Linderbaum pick. But Lamar's wondering what's happening, right? The players are wondering what's happening. But I think overall, the business of draft a player, get time out of them, and recoup the same pick, basically, that's incredible business. And when you make those decisions over time, the roster is going to be really good. And that's why the Ravens came away with a starting center in Tyler Linderbaum, which I know you guys told me he was too undersized and he's not going to the Ravens. Well, he's now a Raven. Uh-huh. And they get Kyle Hamilton, as you said, right? 2 very good players at their position that are immediately add some value.
There is a balancing act between, asset management and kind of maintaining the value of your assets and then cashing out at the right time and before their value diminishes. And at some point, you need the asset. Like, at some point, you bought this thing for a reason. You keep the thing around when it turned out exactly as you wanted it to. And I think for a guy like Marquise Brown, he isn't good enough that you would absolutely say we have to keep this guy whatever the cost becomes. But for A.J. Brown, to me, he's good enough that he's the reason you draft an A.J. Brown, right? You draft this guy because he's got incredible potential and high-end talent, and he absolutely hit. And he knocked it out of the park because you didn't spend a first-round pick on him. So you're getting an elite player. You didn't have to pay a ton in terms of draft resources to get him in the first place, and now the time has come for his second contract. You have to pay him some money. But he's worth it. So pay him the money and keep him around, because that asset is vital to your success winning football games in the past and right now and going forward. So you sign him. You don't trade him away, because now you got to go find him again. Now you got to go draft the Traylon Burks and hope that you hit the same guy. Whereas I think the Ravens had a player that isn't at that level. I think it's a much easier thing to say, well, we can kind of flip him for a similar amount of value and try the whole thing again.
I think it's just like quarterback, though, right? I think at quarterback, we talk about you find your top 8 guy and you lock him up and just don't let him go and build around him. The other guys, Derek Carr range and Kirk Cousins range and Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, or you got to think about it a little bit more, and you got to figure out if I do pay him, or do I go to the next guy? Do I go to the first contract quarterback? And how much is the drop off? I think receivers becoming similar, right? And I'm telling you, my theory at least, is going to get tested here. My theory that you flood the field with as many difficult to cover playmakers as possible. And some teams who didn't have that are now going to have that. And the teams that had that won't have it anymore. And I'm going to find out how much of the difference maker is A.J. Brown. Because as I mentioned in our one-off video that's on YouTube somewhere, A.J. Brown, was he the reason Ryan Tannehill became a very, very good quarterback for the last 3 years with the Titans? You could point to the Titans, the new system, Derrick Henry, or was it just A.J. Brown? Force multiplier at receiver, the same way Julio Jones was in Atlanta for years. What are the Packers going to do at receiver? Because you're replacing Devontae Adams so far with Sammy Watkins and whatever they can get later in the draft. Still time, right? It's not going to be better. It's not going to be better than last year, right? The Chiefs receivers are not going to be better than last year with Tyreek Hill. So you can win different ways in the NFL, but my theory is going to get tested. Because I'm like, playing fantasy football, give me all the receivers, I'm going to pay more for them. And a lot of the NFL is making the same move. And the other half of the NFL is, I think, starting to play left-handed. Like the Titans have Robert Woods right now.
Well, the Titans...
And Treylon Burks has to replace A.J. Brown, and that is very risky for that team.
Yes. The Titans, though, have at least done the sort of the game plan, the standard MO for this move, right, which is to replicate or try and replicate what the Minnesota Vikings did a couple of years ago by trading away Stephon Diggs and immediately replacing him with Justin Jefferson. That's the dream, right? Because you get effectively the same player, at least in terms of production and wins above replacement, impact on your offense, that kind of thing, and you do it for a fraction of the price. So you're net better off. You net win, right? Because you got the same player and you got cheaper. Perfect. Problem is the Bills, on the flip side of that trade, essentially paid the guaranteed money or the extra money for the certainty that they'll get that player, right? Instead of gambling that the receiver they would take in the draft can become Stephon Diggs, you just pay the money for the guarantee that you're getting Stephon Diggs. The Titans are trying to do that exact same trick by trading away A.J. Brown and using the saved money to gamble that Treylon Burks will be the same player or a comparable player or a net win given the saving you're going to have. Where it gets really weird is that Green Bay and Kansas City have traded away their elite receiver, one because they didn't want to pay him, Kansas City, and two, Green Bay because he just wanted out and you screwed him around enough that he wanted out before you could pay him. And they haven't yet they haven't tried to replace him with the picks you got in favor of him. So they're not, right now, those two guys are not even trying to sort of play that gamble game of, well, let's risk some money to replace him with an unknown quantity. They're just like, no, let's just save the money and invest it somewhere else. So they've both voluntarily right now decided to get cheaper at wide receiver and just use the money to invest somewhere else, which is unusual in a league that is trending ever more pass happy.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories in this draft, the trades and all the team building decisions, but it's the pass game, man. We haven't even talked about. There's only one quarterback that got drafted there, but let's discuss those receivers because the PFF draft tracker pretty slick, man. We got a best available list available. We had two top 32 players at receiver that are still available in the second round. Sky Moore, we love him from Western Michigan. George Pickens, another guy, especially on this podcast, you love him. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to take that chance. I don't know. I'm not in the interview process. I don't know what the off-field concerns are that have been surfaced other than we haven't seen him play a ton of football. You get the off-field stuff, but the high-end potential is absolutely there. So it's not over. You like Jalen Tolbert. He's 54 on our board. Christian Watson was rumored to go in the first round because he's 6'4" and runs 4.3 something. So, Calvin Austin's your guy. There are players available. But now you're talking about if you're going to replace Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, whatever, you're doing it with a lesser player, and you have to do it with, surplus. Right? You have to do it with extra players, a lot of receivers. And I just, I think for this year it means a lot for the Packers and the Chiefs and some of these other teams to replace the guys that they lost at receiver or tight end, you just want to flood the field with playmakers, and there's still teams that have to figure that out.
I mean, look, Kansas City has a lot of wiggle room because they have Patrick Mahomes, who is still a young quarterback. They still have Travis Kelce. Like, they have a great offensive line. Like, Kansas City they've got some room to maneuver here. Green Bay is staring down the barrel of the last couple of years of Aaron Rodgers' career, and they just traded away the only capable guy he has to throw to. So they were a team that, like, you don't really have the luxury of screwing around with these first-round picks and hoping that the value will still be there lower in the draft and you can, attack wide receiver later on, where you're right, there may be value because there are still very good receivers on the board. On the other hand, Green Bay doesn't pick for a while. Like, Green Bay's next pick is at 53. You got to get another 20 picks down the road before your next pick even comes up, at which point all the guys you just mentioned could be gone.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, look, we're going to spend a lot of time this weekend and this week talking about every single move, and the starting guard it's not going to determine the Super Bowl next year, probably. But Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are going to be very good next year. Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are going to be very good next year. But you're trying to win championships and maximize those championships. And we made the point at the Tyreek Hill trade, the Chiefs they'll be better long term, right? They're going to essentially replace Tyreek Hill with 5 players. They probably already got rid of some of those picks to go get Trent McDuffie. That defense is going to be better in Kansas City. But man, with Rodgers, the window closing and all that stuff, and I think both teams, the Chiefs and the Packers, probably take a slight step back next year because you're competing at the very highest level. They're going to be very good, but a loaded AFC and then Green Bay, you just want to do everything by your quarterback to make him good. Green Bay goes with the 2 Georgia players. Quay Walker does land in the first round, the safe linebacker, because the dude just tackles. That's all he does. And then Devontae Wyatt, the interior pass rusher at Georgia. So once again, Rodgers not getting his playmakers in round 1. But they were all gone by then.
I mean, look, I love Devontae Wyatt. I think that's a really good pick.
I do too.
The Quay Walker one, I don't think is a good pick. That's one of my least favorite picks in the first round.
I'm with you. I can't get by. Like, he is very athletic. He's almost the built-in a lab linebacker, but he plays like a safe second or third round pick. I was just talking to Chris up in the in between shows here, the boss, right? And I was like, hey, I should have listened to you about a couple players, Jahan Dotson, Kenyan Green, love those guys, and they go in the middle of the first round. And he was saying, well, NFL teams seem to they draft traits in the first round, and they draft the good players in the second round. Quay Walker's like the guy that has traits who plays like just a solid player, that like a second, third round type of player. So you're banking on the traits, but he's also a safe player, right? He doesn't make explosive plays. He doesn't make as many flash plays, and you're going to try to get it out of him in Green Bay. But is that going to move the needle for them this year or in the future? Quay Walker at linebacker, Devontae Wyatt, they're good players. Is that the thing that's going to, get them competing with the Bucs and the Rams and everyone else in the NFC? They're already there, but what's going to get them over the top?
No, I mean, the idea that you would pass up the chance to grab a wide receiver, any wide receiver, just for the chance that he will give you some way towards replacing what you lost in Devontae Adams, for a linebacker, not just a linebacker, but a guy who was, so he's the first linebacker off the board in this draft. He's not even the best linebacker on his own team. Like, he's not only is he not the best linebacker from that Georgia defense, but he didn't come even in the same ballpark as looking as good as Nakobe Dean, who was by far the better player on that defense. So it's a real challenge for you to make the argument that because this guy has prototypical size and traits, blah, 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 that makes him a better player than the guy who was so obviously a better player when you watch them play alongside each other.
It's a weird...
Even if you've decided that off-the-ball linebacker is a position worth pursuing at that point.
It's a weird process, isn't it? The whole process is just, it's crazy. I mean, you are projecting. I get it.
So, look, yeah, but that projection is a lot easier of an argument to stomach when you're saying, right, I am going to explain to you why Trayvon Walker, a guy who comes from this specific defense that has these idiosyncratic issues that caused him to look less good than Aidan Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau, right? This is why he projects to being a better player at the next level with these athletic traits. Because in a different scheme where they allow him to do these other different things, he'll look better than those guys who had those opportunities already. You can't make that argument for a guy who's playing next to him in the same defense. You can't.
They still play different roles at linebacker.
You can't take that argument, though, where you're like, oh, you see, the Georgia defense here was crippling the opportunity of Quay Walker to make these plays. And if he gets given the opportunities, he'll look way different. You're like, what, like the guy right next to him that doesn't seem to have those issues? No, that doesn't make any sense. You can't make the same projection.
All I know is I'm shiny object guy. I am shiny object guy, and the Eagles got the shiniest object tonight. A.J. Brown. There's no uncertainty as to what he is, other than the injury. Yeah, he's been a little on and off the field. Shiny object guy. Love what the Eagles did because of that.
Well, there's also,
and if you didn't come away with that, like Jahan Dotson could be a very good player, but you're the Commanders at 15. They trade it down. They get Jahan Dotson. It looks like a real good, solid number 2 complement to Terry McLaurin. Meanwhile, a couple picks later, the Eagles flip their pick for A.J. Brown to pair with Devontae Smith.
I mean, look, that would be an interesting pick. You talked, should the Jacksonville Jaguars give up number 1 overall for A.J. Brown in his contract? Like Washington, you draft Jahan Dotson, or you could have had A.J. Brown and his contract. Now they have problems because they've got, the A.J. Brown contract is also about to be the Terry McLaurin contract, and you can't really
probably can't pay both.
Yes.
And look, the Chargers might have it right. They don't have the elite receiver, but they have the only $20 million receiver. Keenan Allen's elite, but he's in that $20 million range. Mike Williams is making just 20.
Well, 3 for 60 is a lot easier to stomach than 2 for 50.
Oh, for sure.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And so they're at the $20 million range, which you can't pay $25 million to 2 receivers. That's going to be really, really tricky. So look, I know not everybody can pay for the shiny object of A.J. Brown. But I'm looking at, there's enough teams around the NFL realizing we either need to have one of the best quarterbacks, and if we don't, we got to have one of the best receiving corps. And those are the 2 strategies. And I'm not saying there's not another strategy around here. But we're going to start to see those differences in the NFL. And can the Dolphins and the Raiders and now the Eagles and the teams that are just loading up on playmakers elevate their quarterbacks? Because the Eagles are treating this like, hey, it's Jalen Hurts, first contract, quarterback. He's heading into year 3. We're treating him just like Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And the Eagles might be different too, right? Where they might, I don't know if they're sold on Jalen Hurts. They don't have to be, though. Build the roster, maximize, and get to the next quarterback if you need to. The Chargers are doing the same thing, but they know eventually they're going to pay Justin Herbert.
By the way, the Eagles also did what I said that they should do when it comes to the type of wide receiver they should snag. You kept trying to give them Chris Olave in the draft because they need another one of those guys that are exactly the same. Whereas I was like, no. What you need is a different skill set that can at least figure out if they can coax something different from Jalen Hurts. They bring in the big-bodied, run after the catch, the dude of A.J. Brown
to go alongside
the route running specialist in.
Yes, A.J. Brown's a fit for everybody. Yes, of course.
He's the different.
You're
type
acting
of
like
receiver.
we're not debating. This wasn't Drake London versus Chris Olave. Those were the debates we're having. Where you're saying, give me Drake London, big-bodied guy, and I'm saying, give me Chris Olave, a guy who gets open, and they went and got A.J. Brown, combination of both.
He's closer to the other style.
No.
Yeah,
A.J. Brown is top 5 caliber, wide receiver 1, good for anybody. It's not a style thing.
If you were describing his skill set, he's way more of that physical.
It doesn't matter. He's in Julio territory. He's in Julio game-changer territory.
Settle down.
That's what A.J. Brown is.
Settle down. Julio territory?
Yes. As far as impact on the field, we've seen it. Ryan Tannehill went from slightly above average quarterback to one of the highest graded quarterbacks in the NFL.
Julio Jones.
And most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL, and A.J. Brown's the reason.
Julio Jones is one of the best receivers of all time and one of the 2 best receivers of his generation. It's a little bit of a stretch to say A.J. Brown is in Julio territory.
Coffee's hitting me good tonight.
Yeah.
It's not Death Wish yet. Is that what it's called?
Something like that.
Death Wish?
Death something.
That'll be on the way soon. We're all about it. But
it would have been good for now, yeah.
Yeah. Now, how about the Lions, too? Every time I pictured Jameson Williams going to a team, and I wonder if this is risky. We talked about this, too. Every time I pictured Jameson Williams, I pictured him as the cherry on top. I pictured him with the Eagles, right, where they have Devontae Smith. They have a different skill set. I pictured him with the Packers. I pictured him with the Chiefs trading up or whatever it is. And he goes to the Lions where they might want him to be the true number one. And that reminds me a little bit of Henry Ruggs and with the Raiders, where it's like it's a cherry on top, deep threat. But I know you like Jameson Williams as more of an all-around receiver. But he didn't go to the team that just he was going to put over the top. He's going to the Lions where he could be the guy. Because they have DJ Chark for a year, and they have Amon-Ra St. Brown on a rookie contract who was very good last year. But now you're talking Jameson Williams maybe as the guy instead of just the designated deep threat. And I don't know if that puts a little bit more pressure on him, but I just didn't picture the Lions being the team that made that move. I like it. I like that fit. It was an aggressive move by the Lions. I just didn't picture that coming in.
Well, we've been saying all the way through this draft process that, the Lions were going to do whatever they were going to do at pick number 2. In this scenario, like, dream for them. They get Aidan Hutchinson and a pick they probably didn't think was going to happen for most of this process. And then it was, well, what are they going to do with their pick at the top or at the bottom of the second round? And number 32, we kept kind of giving them a quarterback and using the term house money, right? They've got this extra pick. Why not roll the dice on a quarterback and see if one of these guys that nobody really loves is actually better than everyone thought they were? And if they are, you hit. It's franchise changing. And it didn't really cost you anything because you had this at a bonus pick from trading away Matthew Stafford. What they did instead was use that and jump up and go after somebody, right? And use the house money, if you like, to make a slightly bigger investment and go after a legit extra first-round talent. And they still have a pick in the middle of the second round, 46. So it's not like they're completely out of luck there. But I kind of like that as a strategy to take what we always were referring to as house money. And look, people were arguing with that, so it's not like that's a 100% like cast iron fact.
Sure.
But if that is the attitude of how you treat that pick, I don't hate the idea of using that, packaging it with something else, and going after a guy that you think is a legitimately game-changing first-round talent. And I think Jameson Williams absolutely is that. And in this group of receivers, so one, I think the league is changing a little bit from these old defined roles of like you need this X receiver, your number one guy that can play in isolation, defeat press coverage, win at all levels of the field. And then you have the Z who plays off the line of scrimmage, who needs to move around a bit, who goes in motion. And then you have these slot players. I think it's becoming more mixed than that. And you just need multiple different weapons and guys that can win, and not necessarily in all ways at all times. And as long as you have a diverse group of receivers,
or even team, right?
Yeah, or even just a group of receivers that are all of a certain level that are good enough to win, doesn't necessarily matter, I think, if you have that X that can win all the time in all ways. So if you have a Jameson Williams, one, I think he's more than just a designated deep threat. But even if he isn't, like even if that's all he brings to the table, and you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's your consistent possession slot receiver on the inside, you have Jameson Williams, who's your designated deep threat, you have DJ Chark, who showed some flashes in Jacksonville, and you probably add one more guy, whether it's in the draft or just somebody else in the depth chart. All of a sudden, that's a reasonably balanced and diverse receiving group. And even if none of those guys are a traditional number one X receiver, it might not matter.
It might not. It doesn't matter now anyway, because I think the Lions, you're still looking at them a year from now, right? As being that team. Look, there's only one QB off the board, too. And the Lions can draft one of these quarterbacks.
Sure.
This is when you want to just take shots on quarterbacks in round 2, absolutely, even though you're like, hey, I didn't like you in the first round. You don't, that's your theory on it. But this is when you start taking some chances on quarterback. But the Lions are still probably a year away. So they can add more at their receiving core. But, man, this is fun. A receiver-driven league. The Chargers are the other team that we were saying, if Jameson Williams is there, like, don't you have to just take him and say, Go ahead. Stop me, NFL. Stop Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert. Stop us. And they get a starting guard. They get a guard in Zion Johnson there at 17. And I'm not hating on guards. We talk about the offensive line a ton here. You got to get to average plus and all that stuff. But, like, if you're the Chargers, that is a no-brainer, right? To take Jameson Williams over Zion Johnson. This is what I'm saying. Like, coming out of the first round, I'm team shiny. Give me the shiny objects. I think that is what's going to win in the NFL. And if you were the Chargers, you would say, I'll take Ode Abushi. He'll be my starting guard. I'll take him off the free agent, right now. Third wave of free agency, I'll take him. But give me the game changers. And I think the teams that got potential game changers have the chance to – they won't all work out, but they have the chance to make the biggest moves.
Sure. I mean, Jameson Williams can transform a game unlike many players, or in a way that not many other players in this draft can do. If they hit on Jameson Williams, it absolutely transforms things.
There are teams. Here's the other thing, too. You know how we, with fourth down decisions, we say if you're the fan of an opposing team and the opposing team punts on 4th and 1 and you're like, oh, thank God, I thought they were going to go for it. And don't you feel that way about Jameson Williams? Like if you're a Chiefs fan and the Chargers didn't get him, or you're a Chargers fan and the Chiefs didn't get him. Like there was a whole bunch of people exhaling saying, oh, good, Jameson Williams went to the Lions for Jared Goff and whatever they're doing there. But like at least for now, because the potential is there through the roof to be a game changer.
Let me pitch you some picks and ask you what the hell.
Okay, yeah, pitch them.
Pick number 15, after trading down, the Texans select Kenyan Green.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just anti-guard, I guess.
Anti-guard.
And look, we went through the mock draft process and we threw guards at people, but it was like only when they really needed it and when other stuff was off the board.
And usually late in the 20s.
And usually in the 20s. A lot of guards, those are the need picks. And the Texans swung for the fences with Derek Stingley and then came back safe, and there's at least that.
Was that even that safe?
No. I mean, in their head, in the NFL's head, if you're drafting a lineman in the first round, you just feel safe. It just feels safe, even if the player himself is risky. And a guy that doesn't grade that well in college should be seen as risky. So, yeah, I didn't love that.
One pick later, pick number 16, the Washington Commanders select Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, it's another one. I don't think he brings.
This one is a pure evaluation thing because there are people out there that love Jahan Dotson. I'm just not one of them.
I would say I'm more willing to go to bat using data and eye test and all. I'm more willing to trust, say, my totality of my evaluation on defensive linemen or offensive linemen or whatever. And I'm more willing to defer that, look, I'm more likely to be wrong on receivers, we'll say. I'll just say that.
To me, the thing about Jahan Dotson is to draft him at 16, it says something about what your evaluation of him is and what you think he can be. And like there was somebody in the chat earlier that was like, Jahan Dotson is OBJ. You're like, wow. I mean, okay, if he is, drafting him at 16 is fine.
I think that's a spoof because now they're telling me, they were saying Antonio Brown earlier.
Whatever, but there are people out there that think he can be like a legit outside perimeter high-end receiver. And you're like, well, if he can, then fine. Drafting him at 16 is cool. If he can't, though, suddenly that becomes a very rich pick to be spending on a guy that is in some way limited as a receiver.
Here's what I think realistically could have happened, though. The Commanders are sitting there at 11. They get the trade offer. Who came out to 11? The Saints made the trade offer to come up to 11. You don't know who it's for. It's Chris Olave, who's the next receiver off the board. Any receivers go after that? I just clicked off for a second.
No.
So the
Jameson,
Commander and Jameson Williams comes at 12, right? So there's a run on receivers. Then the other receivers that went after Jahan Dotson was Treylon Burks, right? And that was pretty much it?
Yeah.
That receiver? So Washington, was it their evaluation is high on Jahan Dotson or a combination of that? Of the top tier receivers, they had Drake London, the 2 Ohio State guys, Jameson Williams, and then Jahan Dotson's 5. There's a drop-off because a lot of the boards, you tier it, and the drop-off is Treylon Burks and Sky Moore and George Pickens. So my guess is the Commanders had Dotson at the bottom end of their top tier of receivers, which is 5, right? Which isn't crazy to put Dotson at 5, even though you disagree with that. But we've seen Dotson anywhere between 5 and 10 on rankings.
To me, what's crazy, though, is not – so even the most optimistic evaluations of Jahan Dotson I have seen, I don't understand why you would be separating him in any significant and meaningful way from Sky Moore. So even if you love that guy, and somebody, like, if you're one of those teams, you love the guy, you've locked in him, you're like, oh, if he's sitting there when we're picking, we are running it to the podium, we're grabbing him. Somebody jumps in front of you, they grab him, you're like, oh, damn, we missed out. Like, okay, but Sky Moore's sitting there, and he does all of the things that Dotson does the same. And he might have other things to his skill set as well. I just don't get... I don't get why you would be like, I get why you would say, yeah, we think that Jahan Dotson is the number 5 receiver in this draft. I don't get why you would say, well, he's 5 and the gap between him and 6 is huge. We have to make that deal.
No, I understand. I get it. So my point is, all right, you ranked him at 5, or maybe you didn't even say there was a big drop off. You just didn't have another trade partner, and it became a need pick. In Washington, and here's, I agree with the mentality. I've said that a million times. You got to build around Carson Wentz, right? You got to give him the playmakers to throw to. You can't have him try to manufacture offense with a great Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel's a complimentary piece. When you throw Dotson into that mix, like, it's not bad, but he looks like an okay number 2, right? Like a pretty good number 2. So the position was right. I'm fine with that, but that felt like a need pick after the trade down. Now, if you look at it as they had 11 and they picked up 2 extra picks plus Jahan Dotson, I mean, there's something to it. But it must feel a couple picks later, the Eagles in your division use their pick to trade for A.J. Brown, essentially, straight up.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you're the Cardinals, man. If you're the Cardinals, I know cap situations and all that stuff are different. They got to pay Kyler. That's happening this offseason. And the Cardinals have all that money in DeAndre Hopkins. But you still gave up a first round for Marquise Brown. He needs a contract soon. Maybe not $20 million, but he still needs a contract soon. Meanwhile, A.J. Brown went for a first round pick. A few picks later, I'm just saying, like, did you get equivalent value if you're the Cardinals for Marquise Brown when A.J. Brown went for also a first round pick? It's a little different. Marquise Brown's got a couple years on his contract, all that stuff. It's not all apples to apples, but shiny object. Just name the pod shiny objects, and Steve wants all of those. What other picks do you want to question here? Some strange picks.
We'll
Any
come
strange
back to that
picks?
one. We've already covered the Quay Walker pick.
Cole Strange?
Yes.
So I love...
Number 29 to New England from Chattanooga.
So because we're not local media beat writers and all that stuff, we don't get to go to the press conferences. The head coaches are having, and the GMs are having press conferences right now as we speak, talking about their first round picks. I like to catch up on those later, but every now and again we get to catch some nuggets. Bill Belichick assured the media already that had they picked at 21, Cole Strange would have been the pick. They traded down from 21 to 29 with the Chiefs and picked Cole Strange, who's a player that was mostly in the 70s, 80s on draft boards for the most part. And look, I mean, how do you balance this one, Sam? People laughed at the Logan Mankins trade years ago. We didn't have PFF back at the time, so we didn't have an opinion on that.
76 on the consensus.
76 on the consensus board. Belichick also said he had a feeling they felt like he was going to be off the board soon.
Okay.
So, look, the Patriots definitely make a lot of picks of players that don't feel like they're going to be off the board soon, right? That has always been the Patriots' MO. And I will say some of them work, some of them don't.
Yeah.
And so I will reserve judgment on that because there's a track record of, especially offensive linemen. They've done a really good job with offensive linemen in New England historically. Have they not?
Yeah.
Receivers, no. Like if he drafted, insert any receiver there.
Harry?
Even our favorite receiver, I would be like, uh-oh. New England picked a receiver? I don't know. The track record's not there. The track record's there for offensive linemen.
Yeah. It is also not a need.
Center guard. He's going to start probably at they traded Shaq Mason.
Yeah.
He's going to start at one of the guard positions probably. David Andrews at center.
They have Michael Uwenu, who couldn't get on the field last year.
Who we think is awesome. I mean, they hit on that pick and then didn't put him on. I mean, look, maybe their evaluation's different than ours too, but he looked like a really good player over the last couple of years.
Yeah. To the
Where's
point
my depth chart? Who else do they have? Who do they have
feels
slotted
like
in?
you should kind of be playing him, you know?
Who do they have slated in at guard here? Slotted in? What am I missing? I don't have my depth chart pulled up at the moment. I thought you were looking at it. But they just traded Shaq Mason.
Yeah, but
you have James Ferentz, so you could start at right guard. You could, and Nwenu could play either guard position or eventually right tackle. Trent Brown's only on a 1-year contract, so it's one of those guard spots.
Yeah,
it's like, and he's got the same. Again, New England media's pulling out. He's got the same measurables as Joe Thuney, as Logan Mankins, and that's how they do their valuation. And he's.
So essentially, this is a colossal reach that we're going to give the benefit of the doubt to because it's the Patriots.
Oh, I don't like it at all. All I'm saying is they have a history of kind of making these things work, right? They have a history of making
sometimes
Ted Karras work, even though he wasn't a first-round pick. But that's what it is. I mean, you're hoping he becomes like a Ted Karras, which isn't a great first-round pick, by the way.
All right.
I don't like the pick, if you want me on the record here.
Good.
I don't like Cole Strange as the pick here.
I don't like Cole Strange. I dislike Cole Strange.
What other picks do you want
to? That's kind of it for the.
Wait, I know what. I would never question Manscaped. That's right. I mean, it's an extra show. We're giving you an extra read here. The only true guaranteed quality pickup this season. It is Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. With Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, your skill position will be sleek and smooth enough for a sub 4.340. Shiny thing, Sam. You want the shiny thing, sub 4.340. Support us and head to manscaped.com. Use the exclusive code PFF. Use that at checkout. 20% off plus free shipping. Because of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology. That's first-round technology. Your nicks and snags will be reduced. In the season of trimming the roster, Manscaped will make sure you're cutting the right players and not any important pieces to your D. Look, fellas, don't fall off her draft board. The ladies out there think the long nose hair is a major turnoff. The Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer is your solution. Why not use the best tools for the job? April's draft season, but it's also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. Get 20% off plus free shipping. It's the code PFF at manscaped.com. It's 20% off, free shipping, manscaped.com. Use the code PFF. Turn your Mr. Irrelevant to a first-round pick with Manscaped.
So I asked on Twitter, had anybody done the math of what the Saints ended up giving up, factoring in all the trades for Chris Olave? Eagles beat guy Jimmy Kempski has written it out and said the Saints basically traded a 2023 first-rounder, a 2024 second-rounder, a couple of 2022 third-rounders this year, and a 2022 fourth in totality for Chris Olave. That's quite a lot to be giving up.
A first?
2023 first, next year.
So a 1, a 2.
A 1 next year, a 2 in 2024, so 2 years out.
2 twos.
No.
A 1, a 2.
And a 2, but 2 years out.
Sure.
A couple of thirds this year.
A 1, a 2, and 2 threes.
And a fourth this year.
For Chris Olave.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
That was the thing, right? We were like, either the Saints love a quarterback or they're going to fill those two needs. We at least got that one.
Well, what they ended
right,
up doing was almost splitting the difference. They did fill their two needs. They got a tackle and a wide receiver. That's what we thought they needed if they were going to stay with their picks. They didn't quite stay with their picks. They still traded up again, but ended up going for 2 players. They traded up without having to give up both firsts, so still got the tackle and the wide receiver.
They're aggressive, man. I mean, for whatever it's worth, we sit here and we talk about best strategies and best ideas. I mean, we all have theories. We all have our thoughts. The Saints have their own strategies and thoughts. They're aggressive with the cap. They're aggressive with trading up.
So let me ask you a question, right? Atlanta are the only team we can say for sure got the number 1 wide receiver on their board, right? Because they picked the first wide receiver.
Yeah.
How many teams do you think that took a wide receiver in the first round got the number 1 wide receiver on their board?
So the Falcons, yes. I think the Jets probably did with Garrett Wilson because they're debating between Drake London and Garrett Wilson. I think the Saints might have honestly just loved Chris Olave.
I honestly think that 4 out of the 5 teams that drafted a wide receiver might have taken the number 1 wide receiver on their board.
The Lions.
The Lions, Jameson Williams, the Saints with Olave, the Jets with Garrett Wilson, and the Falcons with Drake London. And then the Commanders with Dotson. I just refuse to believe there's any possible
No, I don't
way.
think they did. I mean, he was the 5th receiver off the board, and It's a common press conference. We talk about press
and
conferences.
Burks.
You always ask, was he your top receiver?
So 4 out of the 6, right? Is that how many went?
Yeah, 6. Burks went to the Titans. Was there anybody else after him?
I don't think so. So 4 out of I think the top 4 genuinely got the first wide receiver on their board.
Do you see how I forget the year that DK Metcalf and AJ Brown were the top 2 receivers on our board? That was Debo's year too, right? All 3 of those guys went in the second round.
Yep.
In just a matter of 3 years, this is how the NFL has changed. Because I think you can make a strong argument that those 3 guys, even as like DK and AJ Brown as prospects, we had them as first-round players. I mean, they were better than this year's class across the board, right? As prospects, I think.
I don't know if they were better, but they were very different. I mean,
okay, the whole thing was different. All I'm saying is those guys went in the second round.
Yeah.
And just 3 years ago in the NFL, there were more teams willing to take their tackles and their guards and their defensive linemen and all that stuff. Whereas now, I think all of these receivers certainly ranked in different places. I think you might be right. 4 teams may have gotten their wide receiver 1, but 6 receivers went in the first round. I think you're starting to see teams. Maybe it was the depth of the receiving class in the first round, whatever. But teams are being more aggressive when it comes to the perimeter playmakers.
It also, I think, speaks to just how weird and diverse this receiving class is. So it's not, when we talked about the Lions earlier and the pursuit of that true number 1 X receiver, there aren't many of those in this draft at all, guys that even have that skill set, like half a dozen maybe, that even you think can become that player down the line. But B, like every one of these guys is a vastly different style of player. You've got the big-bodied guy who might run a 4.7 and could even be limited as a slot Michael Thomas type of player in Drake London. You've got pure speedster in Jameson Williams who can do more. You've got the gliding, smooth route running of Chris Olave, and then you've got Garrett Wilson, who's the sort of Stephon Diggs composite of maybe nothing is spectacular, but everything is good. These are 4 completely different types of receivers.
See, let me word it differently, because I don't think it's the X receiver thing. For me, it's the high volume target guy, right? 31 receivers last year had at least 100 targets in the NFL. So when I'm talking about a first round pick, I'm not talking about is he an X, a Z, a slot. Like that's how we describe the players. But I'm talking about a guy that's going to get 100 targets, 120 targets. The top target guy was Cooper Kupp with 189. That was 23 more than anyone else. That was just the regular season. Then he went off, of course, in the postseason too. I'm talking 100 target guys. So with Jameson Williams, like with Chris Olave, the reason why I compared him to Keenan Allen, not necessarily stylistically, it was that Keenan Allen had 150 targets. Like, could you see Chris Olave having 150 targets in a season, being a high volume receiver? I think I can. Garrett Wilson, I can. Drake London, probably. I don't see it as much with Jameson Williams, and I don't want to force that on him, because if you're doing that, he's got to run a few more slants, and he's got to run some drags and some underneath stuff, when I just want him being my take the top off the defense guy. That's all I'm saying. It's not is he an X. It's because you picked him at 12. Isn't that where Ruggs went to?
Yeah.
Because you picked him at 12.
Yeah. Did he go 11 or 12?
Something like I think it was in that range. Because you picked him there, and Ruggs went over CeeDee Lamb.
Yes.
And CeeDee Lamb, I'm giving him 150 targets, and I'm feeling good about it. Ruggs, I know the story, but just using it as an example. I never liked Ruggs as a 100 target, 120, 150 target guy. Is Jameson Williams that guy? And so I just don't want the Lions to force 100, 120, 150 targets on him to justify number 12. I want them to use him to his skill set, and that's all I'm saying. And not so much X receiver, it's usage pattern and volume and all that stuff.
Yeah, I just think I don't know if this is a weirdly unique year, but it seems to me that the top of this group from wide receivers are unusually disparate in terms of their skill sets, and that I think is potentially leading to the situation where you're getting teams going aggressively after wide receiver because they actually have that guy ranked, the top of their board, because that's the type of receiver they're looking for, and maybe it isn't the type of receiver that the next team is looking for. But the fact that receivers are going off the board leads to a team like Detroit going, well, we can't hang around because this guy's going to go at some point, and he's the number 1 guy we have. Yeah,
I wonder if it was a run or if it was number 1 guys. Like, did the Saints just think Olave's our number one, let's go get him? Or there was just 2 receivers off the board, go get him.
Maybe.
But look, here's what we've learned this offseason. Yeah, you trade up for various positions, but the NFL has made massive trades for receivers, thrown a ton of money at them, and then traded up to get them. And I think they're realizing it's an arms race for offense, and that's what they're doing. And I think if you're not playing that game, I think you're falling behind. It's not that you can't. You need defense. You need defensive players. But if you are not actively making your pass game better or your pass defense better, you're falling behind. And I think that's the bottom line in this whole thing. And offensive linemen help that, but they help it at a smaller clip than the shiny object.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks. Just how bad is this class?
Oh, we finally got to quarterbacks here. I love how you're directing traffic.
Yeah.
I'm just out of my mind.
So look, we said all along.
After hours, Steve's out of his mind here.
This isn't news, right? We said all along this is not a good quarterback class. We also said though it isn't as bad as 2013, the EJ Manuel class, right? Where the first quarterback went, where EJ Manuel went, was pick 15.
EJ Manuel at 15. Geno Smith went in the second round.
Yeah,
and then Mike Glennon went in the third round.
Right. So we're like, it's not as bad as that, and yet the first and only quarterback taken so far, Kenny Pickett at 27, or a few spots below where EJ Manuel went.
Yes.
And this has been an entire offseason of teams desperately maneuvering for veterans rather than risk this rookie quarterback class.
Yeah, I think this entire time we were balancing the concept of you got to take shots at quarterback with the NFL's making moves for high-end starters, and are they doing that because they don't love the draft class, or again because it's an arms race to make your pass game better, and you only do that with making moves for Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson and just getting the high-end guys. I think we would all look at these quarterbacks and say, like, Malik Willis was the guy that we were most comfortable taking in the first round. I only would have taken other guys late first round. And I think the NFL ultimately agreed, other than it was Pickett instead of Willis for the Steelers.
So Bruce Feldman had an interesting article on The Athletic where he surveys just an absolute ton of people, all anonymously, which therefore prompts some interesting quotes, right? Whether it's quarterback coaches, head coaches, scouts, all this kind of stuff. And one of the questions he asked was, look, there's been a lot of talk about how bad this is for quarterback prospects. How do you see it? How many of these guys are legit first-round talents, et cetera, et cetera? And one quarterback coach said the highest-graded quarterback this year. Now, he said it's Sam Howell, but whatever. But he then said you have a second-round grade on him. They have a third-round grade on Kenny Pickett. And if you looked at his 2020 film, it would be a 6th or 7th round grade. Like,
legit, yeah.
These are actual NFL quarterback coaches who are saying this is awful as a draft class of quarterbacks.
That's in a vacuum too, Sam, right?
Yeah.
That's in a vacuum. Those are their draft grades. And then in reality...
And the first quarterback coach here was saying all the top ones this year, second-round guys.
Yes. So that's in a vacuum, second-round grade. Then you have the reality of what's happening in the actual NFL, where if you don't have one of those top 8 or 10 guys, or if you have... I'm praising the Eagles left and right, but if you have Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz in the NFC East... Mac Jones, like if you have a middle-of-the-road quarterback, you feel like you're behind. You feel like you've been left behind. And that's with current NFL quarterbacks, right? Don't you feel like you're just working from a deficit and everything else has to be built up so much better around them? Jimmy Garoppolo, right? We're 1 year removed from the Niners and Rams trying to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo and Jared Goff, two quarterbacks that took them to the Super Bowl. So that's in the current NFL. And then this quarterback class comes in, and you have a whole bunch of second-round grades and some fringe first-round grades or whatever, and they just don't want to do it. Like, why do you – so they just said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to take just a starter. We're not going to do it. We could find starters. I also think there was just – demand was lower, wasn't it? Like, who are the desperate teams for quarterbacks? Carolina's one.
Seattle's another.
And Atlanta's debatable. And the Steelers we're probably in that mix because they have a bridge quarterback in Trubisky.
Sure.
And then that's pretty much it. So demand was definitely lower than it usually is. The Saints could have been in that bucket because they have Jameis, but like the demand is definitely lower, I think, overall than it's been. But yeah, that bore out. Like teams didn't overdraft quarterbacks this year. They stuck with what their evaluation was.
Yeah, and it does seem like we've been this class might be seen as bad as the E.J. Manuel class. Now, it seems like there's more depth because we've been talking about a top 5 or a top 6 of these quarterbacks, whereas the E.J. Manuel class, it's like, all right, E.J. might be the only one we're even vaguely interested in. Then it gets to the second round with Geno and the third round with Mike Lennon. Like, that was not only bad in terms of the top, but there was almost no depth to it either. So maybe this class wins just in terms of depth, but nobody wants any part of these quarterbacks.
So in round 2 here, where are these QBs going to go? The Bucs are on the clock first. The Vikings are on the clock second. Do they start thinking to the future at quarterback? I doubt it. The Texans are up at 37. Do they want somebody to come in to compete with Davis Mills?
Nope. I think the next quarterback is
Seahawks.
one of those Seattle picks.
40 and 41 to the Seahawks.
Atlanta at 43.
Yep. The Lions at 46.
Maybe.
I'm just saying maybe. They could think about it.
Yeah,
right?
I wouldn't be shocked if the Lions punted on quarterback entirely this year.
Now, 47's the place where the report was the Commanders are doing a lot of work on Matt Corral.
Yeah. I mean, basically any team that's picking it around the 40s makes some sense. The Saints at 49 could still be in the market. That's the area where, in a vacuum, people have been talking about these quarterbacks going. The problem is usually those guys get pushed into the first round because you need a quarterback.
Now, listen, once you get past Washington at 47, though, you get the Saints at 49. I don't know if they're going to go that route. You have a whole bunch of teams that don't need a quarterback for a while. Falcons come back up at 58. So the Falcons have 2 second-rounders. You got to think one of them's probably on a QB, I would imagine. Some of those guys, that top 5 that we thought were any of them could end up in the first round depending on the evaluations.
They're going to be third-rounders.
They could be third-rounders, legitimately. Like the Texans at the top of the third could get one of those guys. The Seahawks will probably get one in the 40s. I agree, but they could get one at 72. The Colts, if they want to look to the future, can get one at 73 if they want to think beyond Matt Ryan. So the Sam Howells and Desmond Ritters and Malik Willises of the world, we could be talking about second or third round prospects now with those players. And because they're quarterbacks, we had all the first round discussions, and I don't think it's crazy.
Which makes sense. Like when you evaluate these guys and you rank them on a big board, the 40s is where, like when you look to PFF's big board, I think Kenny Pickett was ranked in the 40s. Like that's where these guys belong.
Even with our value bump that we like to add to the mix there.
That is where this group deserved to be in terms of playing ability right now. But we expected that just the nature of the game and the way how important quarterback is, that they would get boosted. I mean, we had the highest quarterback on PFF's big board was Malik Willis, and that was 30. So bottom of the first round. The only guy with the first round grade, Sam Howell 34, Ritter 41, Pickett 42, Matt Corral 53, Carson Strong 68. And that actually is starting to look like where these guys are going to be going.
And Carson Strong. Is that what you said?
68? Yeah, 68.
Yeah. And then a big drop off to Bailey Zappi.
Right.
Thick Case Keenum.
Thick Case Keenum
was your comp there for Bailey Zappi. Man, how long have we been going? I can go all night.
No, we can't.
We got more videos to record. Who else is staying up with us? But the chat's cooking. People are staying up all night listening and watching us. Let's wait till my battery runs out. What do we have left for battery on my computer? 45 minutes. We have 45 minutes left.
So what's the Panthers' plan at quarterback now? They didn't take one at 6. They didn't go with the Kenny Pickett at 6 thing. They drafted a tackle. They went nice, safe, simple.
They trade
better.
A 3 for Jimmy Garoppolo.
For Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah.
A 3. They don't have a 3, do they?
Next year. Not this year. Next year's 3 for Jimmy Garoppolo. Or, if Baker Mayfield gets released,
yes,
I pounce.
Sure.
If I'm any team.
I refuse to believe they're trading for Baker Mayfield, though. I cannot believe they
No. I don't think they're actively going for the guy that was picked 2 slots ahead of Sam Darnold.
And essentially
also came out
of the experiment.
It's more palatable for the Panthers, overusing the word palatable, It's easier for the Panthers to talk themselves into Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got a winning record. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's had all this success. He's done all these things. And saying we're going to bring him in as our veteran quarterback. It's so much easier for them to say that than to go get Baker Mayfield, even though I think they're comparable quarterbacks.
Do you think it's plausible that they still believe in their heart of hearts that Sam Darnold can be good?
I think they can go into the season with him because they lost. I mean, look, if the option is sunk cost Sam Darnold, I mean, you talked about David Tepper, right? I mean, he doesn't want to.
Because look, if
David Tepper doesn't want to mortgage his entire future for the Panthers.
If you're a truther, if you're one of those hardcore like conspiracy theory lunatics that really believe something, no matter how crazy it is, right?
Hey, some of them are true. I was a Darnold guy. I was a Darnold truther.
Yeah.
You seen his redshirt freshman Rose Bowl?
But there's people out there that vehemently believe something quite crazy. And no amount of evidence will ever dissuade them away from that. And in fact, no matter what the evidence is, they'll find like a small, tiny nugget in there, that will somehow reinforce what they think. So if you're the Panthers and last year you convinced yourself that, you know what, this guy's legit. I mean, I saw his college tape, right? I saw that Rose Bowl game. It was amazing. And really what's happened is that the Jets have just ruined him. Look at this deadbeat franchise in New York, New Jersey, not even New York, right? They've just ruined him. They had this terrible supporting cast, terrible coaching, terrible offensive line, terrible receiving weapons. The dude had no shot. So we're going to rescue him. We're going to bring him to Carolina. He's going to have the best receiving group he's ever had. He's going to have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. He's got Joe Brady as his offensive coordinator. We are going to rescue this guy, and we'll look like geniuses. And all it's going to do is cost us, some mid-round picks and pick up his fifth-year option. This is how we get back on track. Right?
Then
they trade for him.
Then they snapped the ball.
Well, no.
Oh, no, okay. Sorry.
Then they win 3 games. They go 3-0, and they're on the way to the Super Bowl. Suddenly we're trading for, Stephon Gilmore, and we're back, baby.
Dan O is a big Darnold guy. He's like, I told you. It was Gase.
Victory laps around the studio.
I told you.
Dan O's loving life, right? And then the wheels fell off, and everything imploded, and were disastrous. But that coincided with Christian McCaffrey getting hurt. And, the offensive line being a steaming pile of hot garbage eventually came back to haunt them. They fixed that now because they went and drafted a tackle, and they've made some moves in free agency, and Christian McCaffrey's coming back. So all the problems that caused Sam Darnold to look like the Jets, they're gone. So Darnold, he's still there.
Because they drafted Evan Neal. Did they draft Evan Neal?
No, acquired him.
Icky, sorry. Listen. Uh-oh. Somebody fill me up. Brain's losing it. Get the wrong player.
Yeah.
Get the wrong player. They drafted Icky.
They
added Austin Corbett. They've added to the offensive line.
In multiple ways. And they got Christian McCaffrey back. And they fired Joe Brady, who was obviously the problem.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you were that inclined in the first place, if you were conspiracy-minded and thinking, the Jets were the problem, you could convince yourself.
And he's working with Jordan Palmer. Just saying.
Hasn't he always been working with Jordan Palmer, though?
Yeah, Jordan's doing some different stuff now, though.
Oh, okay.
It's more into movement skills and everything. I like Jordan. I've talked to Jordan a little bit about this stuff. Yeah.
Did you ask him why he couldn't fix Sam Darnold?
They're doing different stuff now, so we'll see this offseason.
Oh, okay.
We'll see if he gets fixed.
You should do the things that Josh Allen did.
Do what Josh Allen did. I would say, look, if the option is, if you're thinking long term, if you're the Panthers, would you really want to give up future draft capital for Jimmy Garoppolo?
Not
Is
much.
Garoppolo going to get released? I don't think he gets released. The Niners have no cap space.
Yeah.
They do need to sign their draft picks. I get that. They don't need a ton of cap space. It's not like free agency's over, right? So you don't need incredible cap space. So but I do think the Panthers could consider rolling out there with Darnold just so they're not mortgaging any more of their future. They're still a rebuilding team that we don't see them till Saturday. They made their tackle pick, and we don't see them till Saturday. That is unideal for a team that's trying to get the roster back on track.
I think there's a real case that the ownership, the direction ownership wants to take, and the direction that people like making picks for their jobs would take are not the same. They're not aligned here. So
nor should ownership let that happen.
No, of course. So David Tepper's looking at this and being like, the best thing we can do right now, okay, we're not in a good situation. We don't have a quarterback, and we have one pick in the first 100. So this isn't great, right? And if we had an offer to trade down, we'd absolutely take it. But if we don't, the best thing we can do is continue to rebuild the offensive line and grab this guy, Ike Ekwonu, who was being talked about as a potential number 1 overall pick. And if that screws you guys, unlucky, because, you might have done better with getting a quarterback earlier in the last couple of years, but you didn't. That's not my problem. That's your problem. The head coach and GM would be like, well, what can we do here? Well, we're going to get fired next year if we stink, so let's find the quarterback. And it doesn't even matter if he's amazing. Let's just roll the dice here, because if we don't hit on one, we're boned.
None of these QBs are falling to the 4th, right?
The 4th?
I mean, Carson Strong could be a 4th-round pick now.
Yeah.
Bring in Carson Strong to compete with Sam Darnold. That's not enough. Is there anything else outside the box, like Jordan Love from Green Bay? But either way, like any of those moves, you got to give up some sort of draft capital.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to do that if I'm the Panthers.
It's got to be next year.
Next year's picks. I don't want to give up next year's picks
right.
for
particularly because if you're going to stink this year, you need next year's picks. So I think they might end up rolling into the season with the crap that they're spouting, which is, Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback. Not that they believe he'll be good, but that they don't have another option, and the ownership doesn't care because he's in this for the long haul.
You want to wrap this up with our best available?
Yeah,
What's
sure.
going to happen on day 2 here? Day 2 is, this is where championships are won.
On day 2.
Day 1's awesome, but day 2 is when this is where you find your players, man. Bernard Raymond. No, I didn't do it right that time.
No.
Bring the pronunciation up again. He was 18th on our board. He's the top player available per PFF, the Central Michigan tackle. Where's Malik Willis? Malik Willis is up there. George Pickens. Nakobe Dean is up there. So Dean and Raymond, the two top 20 players by our listing. Sky Moore, Andrew Booth, I know you love him. Clemson corner. Travis Jones from UConn, the interior defensive lineman. George Pickens, still there, number 28 on our draft board. I think when you talk boomer bust and what the payout could be with George Pickens,
Malik Willis.
Here's what you're going to hear over the next few hours. The Bucks hold all the cards. They get the first pick of round 2. Everybody's calling the Bucks.
Always.
Every year you hear this, and then that team just picks it. They never trade out. They just pick. So the Bucks are picking at the top of the second round. Malik Willis, we have him as our top quarterback available. My guy, Arnold Ebiketie, edge defender out of Penn State. Big fan of him. Jalen Petre, the corner/safety out of Baylor. Sam Howell still there. Leo Chanel, Wisconsin linebacker. So these are all some of the top players here in the second round.
One last team to cover before we bounce out of this. What do you make of what the Vikings are doing? Kwesi comes in, the analytics GM, even though he's a finance GM, really, originally. Kevin O'Connell, new regime, doing nothing new. This is like a Rick Spielman playbook, right? We trade down, we grab a unexciting position, we carry on carrying on.
Not everything Rick Spielman did was wrong.
I never said it was. I'm just saying that, again, what's the point in firing Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer only to repeat what they did?
I'm trying to get Rick on the podcast, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
In a few weeks.
Big TikTok guy, I believe.
He is, yes. I talked to Rick the other day about his TikTok.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's trying to grow it. Follow Rick on TikTok. I don't know where, but just search Rick Spielman. He's
well, you'll find it.
Trying to push his TikTok.
My point is simply, I simply, from day one of this change, I haven't understood it. I don't get why you fire.
You liked this trade at the time. You're like, hey, this is a good trade, right?
Well, it was before I saw there was a second-round pick involved in it as well.
They flipped second-round picks, and they picked up an extra.
Trading down is fine. When they were picking at number 12, the board hadn't fallen in such a way that I think they had a great number of options at 12 for what they would have gone. In drafts, mock drafts, you'd seen them taking Derek Stingley or whatever at 12. It didn't fall that way at all. They didn't have a great selection at 12, so they trade down. Fine, not a problem. They trade all the way to 32. That's quite a way. And you end up drafting Lewis Cine from Georgia, who I love, by the way. I think he's a really good player and one of the underrated players in that Georgia defense. On the other hand, again, it's a safety, That's like,
Is this the real terms of the trade?
what?
So the ones we have in the chat here, I just want to confirm here. The Lions got 12 and 40. They got 12 in the first round. The Lions get 12.
Yeah.
The Vikings moved from 12 to 32. That's a 20-spot drop in the first round.
Yes.
In the second round, it's saying the Vikings got 34
Yeah.
in exchange for 46.
No, 32 and 34. So, yeah, they get the first round and the third.
But I'm just doing one for one. The 2 first-round picks, 12 to 32.
And 66.
But listen to me. Yeah, fine. But it's 12 to 32. That's a 20-spot drop in the first round.
Yeah.
In the second round, the Vikings move up 12 spots from 46 to 34.
Yeah.
So they move down 20 in the first,
Yeah.
up 12 in the second,
And get another second.
and then they got pick 66, another second-round pick.
Yes.
Is that enough for the 20-spot drop in the first round?
That's why I'm saying I liked it until I saw the number 46.
Yeah, I
was in it.
misread it at first. I thought they just picked up an extra two extra twos,
Yes.
and that 66 isn't a 2. It's a 3.
Isn't it the bottom
Right.
of the 2? The second?
There's 64 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Even with isn't there in the extra one for
There's no comp picks in the first 2 rounds.
No, you're right. It's the top of the set, the top of the
So
third.
it's a high 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't look that great
No.
on the surface.
And then you spend that pick on a safety, which is fine. He's a nice player, good player, but a safety.
I'm fine with Lewisine at 32. I'm fine with all of that. I don't know if the Vikings got enough there though. If that's true, I don't. Nobody's corrected the trade terms there. I haven't checked the charts. Can we get some Spielberger Fitzgerald chart over here?
Well, probably not right now, but
We don't have it live. Tune
Again,
in next week. We'll have more analysis.
My
there.
question is simply again, like, what are they doing other than treading water? And if all
What
they're
do you
doing,
want? I don't know what you want for them.
I want change. I want change. Is that too much to ask?
What do you want different? You want like trade for AJ Brown type stuff? Because that's me.
The Vikings
If you had hired me Vikings for $3 million a year, I would have traded for AJ Brown.
The Vikings franchise right now is a rowboat with only one functioning oar that is just spinning in a circle slowly in the water, right?
It takes time, man.
So what they've done is, in order to fix that, they've hauled in the oars, right? This is not working. We're just spinning in a circle here. We've hauled in the oars, and they've fired the guy that was rowing, right? You're the problem. Get the hell out of that chair. Somebody else is going to row this boat now. And then they've just put the oars back out and continued to spin in a circle. You didn't fix the problem.
So I know the trade charts take care of all this stuff and everything, right? But there's a big difference between pick 12 and pick 32 in the first round, right? As you get further in the draft, there's not a big difference in the picks because the boards diverge quite a bit. So moving up 12 spots in the second, there's a really good chance you're getting the same guy that you would take at 34, the same guy that you would take at 46. It's probably close, right? You're at least in the same bucket. And then you add up pick 66, a third rounder. So from this perspective, the Vikings, like what if they took Kyle Hamilton instead of Lewisine? Maybe in the second round you still get the same guy, and then you just don't get that extra third round. Like, so they may have only gotten, let's say they stay in the same position, Lewisine in exchange for Kyle Hamilton. Maybe you get your pick of the guy in the second round, but it's the same range, and then you get an extra third. And is that enough? Look, I'm team more picks. This one on the surface doesn't look right.
No, I don't think I think they lost this trade, period. And even if they hadn't lost this trade, my question is simply, what is this team trying to achieve with a new regime that isn't doing exactly the same thing as the old regime would have done? And if it's not doing anything different, then what was the point in dumping the old regime?
All I'm saying is, what specifically do you want? Better players, different style, like I want corners, like what are the things that you're looking for that says, here's what we're doing
any
different?
Indication whatsoever that there will be something different this year.
I mean, just give it some,
the last few years.
You take time. It's a process. It is a process you have to make a whole bunch of good moves over and over again. That's what it is. And if you're telling me there's not a pattern to the moves or none of the moves are good or what, I mean, that fine. If you don't think the moves are good, that's one thing. If you're looking for like a pattern, I don't know what pattern you're looking for. Keep trading down and getting more players and hope that they're better.
I mean, if you summed up on a spreadsheet everything that the Vikings have done this offseason and handed it to somebody and asked them, did Rick Spielman do this? They would say yes. Correct? Like, they've literally done nothing different. This is exactly the game plan that Rick Spielman would have done if he was still in the job, right?
You're saying Kwesi's a puppet GM?
I'm simply asking if that is true, then why was he fired?
Oh, I mean, I'll ask him.
Somebody should answer that, because if there was no purpose to his firing, then why did we do it?
I'll ask him on the show. Is Kwesi doing the same thing you would do, Rick? Is he doing the same stuff?
There was a lot of excitement with Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell because they would bring something different to the
table. Give them time.
So far, there's been nothing different brought to the table.
Just give them time. People did want Vikings analysis. Yeah, there's nothing. Look, some teams come out of the first round with less excitement. That's the truth. Other teams get shiny objects, like A.J. Brown in Philadelphia. The story of this year, I thought the story of last year was partially the Rams move for Matthew Stafford, and that was like the biggest storyline coming out, and it ended up in a Super Bowl, which was amazing. That all happened after a very good team got aggressive and went and got their quarterback. The story of this season, I think, is the QB. It's the QBs and the receivers on the move, of course, but then what do we learn from that? Because all the teams that are getting these elite receivers don't have a top 10 quarterback probably. So how much of the receivers the drivers? How much of the quarterbacks the drivers? There's so much here. And there's a bunch of teams in that storyline, so to speak. And the teams that I think are outside that storyline have some work to do. You know what I'm saying? That's it. The teams that don't have the elite quarterback or elite playmakers have a lot of work to do. You have to be so much better in other parts of your roster. And if you're not moving your pass game forward, you're falling behind in today's NFL. That's it. That's the theme of the draft. It's the theme of the offseason. That's where we are. And some teams are moving forward, and some teams feel like they're not. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And that's what you're saying the Vikings are doing.
Correct.
Okay. That's fair.
Not even treading water, just spinning in a circle with a broken oar.
Even the Titans must feel like that a little bit. Titans. Any team that drafted a guard.
Yeah, but the Titans, it's easier to feel okay with that when you came from a position of being the number one seed in the AFC.
True, but every other team in the AFC got so much better this year.
No, I know that, but it's still easier to talk yourself into that being an okay thing than Minnesota, who literally fired people because they weren't happy with where they were and are completing a playbook to get right back there again.
All I know is I appreciate all of our live YouTube viewers. We have over 2,400 people sitting here live watching us right now at 1:30 Eastern in the morning. Probably a lot of West Coasters here, but there's some East Coasters, right? Just staying up, take work off tomorrow. Who cares?
Sure.
And we're just going to be here all night.
That dude with the 7-screen setup, that guy's not working tomorrow.
No. I mean, his job's just setting up his 7 screens, writing a program for that. Got to get him setting me up as well. Is that it? Is that our round 1 recap?
Yeah. Because we got stuff to do.
Yeah, we do. Elite 50. That's not it. Draft 50. 50%. I'm losing it. I'm going to start saying all the wrong stuff because it's 1:30 in the morning.
Don't use that promo code.
Draft 50 is the real promo code. 50% off over at PFF.com. No running backs went in the first round.
No.
1 QB and 0 running backs and 1 million receivers.
Imagine if 1 running back and 0
NFL.
QBs.
Yeah, shout out if you're on the East Coast over here. Was there any buzzing in today's show? Let us know if there's any buzzing because I'm unplugged. I'm going to plug in the other room.
Swear to God, if there was buzzing, I'm going to murder you.
All right, thanks to everybody for tuning in. It's a round 1 recap. We're going to be back. We're going to have to knock out 4 podcasts Monday through Thursday next week. 2 divisions per, recapping all 7 rounds of the NFL draft. And then tonight, Friday night 2 of the draft. They're letting me on the live show, so you can tune in tonight. I know you missed it last night because we weren't there, right? All the people were asking for us, Sam. They were asking. But, we'll be live Friday night and Saturday. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We're out of here.